Welcome to the Daily Power Parsha. It's great to see you. I'm your host, Rabbi Ari, and you are you, which is good because it's good to be you. Okay, Mark Twain said, be yourself, everyone else is taken, and I think that is consistently a good thing to think about. So let's jump in. Today we're going to start the second of our double portion. I'm going to share my screen with you. We're ready to jump right in. Today is Wednesday, not Thursday. I was hovering over the TH of Thursday, but nope. Today is Wednesday, and we are going to begin second portion. This is Numbers chapter 33. Maasei, just so you know, this is the final Torah portion in the book of Numbers. This is it. This is the closeout special. It's called Maasei. I'll highlight the Hebrew word there. Ela Maasei. Maasei means journeys. Ela Maasei means these are the journeys. So what's going on? Again, it's all about context. Hey Karen, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Hey Karen, welcome. Good to see you. So it's important to know context. So why suddenly are we about to review the journeys of the Jewish people in the wilderness? Because we're at the end of the journey. Next step, Israel. We've already established that in the last few days, right? This is 40 years after the Exodus. They've already done the rounds. And now, next stop, land of Israel. So the Torah is kind of summarizing. It's kind of bringing to a close the previous chapter of Jewish life, which included the journeys. So the Torah portion begins. Ela Maasei, these are the journeys of the children of Israel. The second of our two portions this week begins with that line. Now, I need to tell you this. The Torah continues to enumerate 42 distinct segments or journeys between Egypt and the Promised Land. There were 42 stops along the way. Anybody familiar with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe? Or to the Galaxy? Or whatever it's called? Apparently I'm not that familiar. But I think the answer to the mystery of life was?
42.
42. Isn't it interesting? I'm not saying more than I'm saying, but I am saying it's interesting, I think, that there are 42 journeys that are enumerated right here in our Torah portion. Journeys between Exodus, kind of the birth of the Jewish people, and the Promised Land. Now, let's read inside. Okay, these are the journeys of the children of Israel who left the land of Egypt in their legions under the charge of Moses and Aaron. Let's continue. Moses, ever the what's a map keeper called? Cartographer or something? Did I get that right? Yes? Something like that? All right. Good. At least we're on the same page. In other words, we're all not experts in this. Moses recorded their starting points for their journeys according to the word of the Lord. And these were their journeys with their starting points. Take a look at this. Verse 3. They journeyed from Ramses. You know where that was? That was in Egypt. Ramses was in Egypt. Right? Like, I think even a pharaoh was called Ramses. Something like that. Anyway, it's a place in Egypt. So they journeyed there in the first month, the month of Nisan, the month of the Exodus, on the 15th day of the first month, on the day following the Passover sacrifice, because remember the Passover sacrifice was brought on the eve of Passover. So on that day, the 15th of Nisan, the children of Israel left triumphantly before the eyes of all the Egyptians. Oh, and by the way, in case you forgot the story, verse 4, and the Egyptians were busy burying because the Lord had struck down their firstborn and wrought vengeance against their deities. Okay, so a little, always in Exodus, and Jews in the Exodus, always like, oh, by the way, you hear about Egypt? I got a great story to tell you. I even have some matzah, if you want. Manischewitz. Like, we're always ready to pounce. But only in a good way. Only in a way of like, this is our rags to riches story. Okay, but that was journey number 1, right? From Ramses out. Well, then what happened? Verse 5. Then they journeyed from Ramses and camped in Sukkot. From Sukkot to Etam. From Etam to Man, the English is driving me little bananas. The Hebrew, Piachiros, which faces Baal Tzafon, and they camped in front of Migdal. They journeyed from there and went to the desert. They walked 3 days. Anyway, you probably get the idea. It goes through every stop along the way. Here's what you need to know. There are 42 stops. It has everything from the Red Sea. Look at verse number 10. They went to Elim and camped by the Red Sea. Well, we know what happened there, right? They camped there and then they got squeezed against the sea and then it split. Some other highlights. Sinai Desert. Do I hear Revelation at Sinai? Right? That was the stop. That became the place where they got the Torah. But you have all these other stops. Look at all these little stops. I mean, each verse is another stop. Right? Each verse is another journey. You get the idea. Then it talks about, at the end of the 40 years, how they went to Mount Har by Edom. It talks about the passing of Aaron. It tells us that he was 123 years old when he passed away. More journeys. Okay. And this is where they're up to. Right here. Verse 49. 49 verses, but trust me, only 42 journeys, because we had a few other verses mixed in. So they camped along the Jordan from Bet Hayeshimot to Avel Shittim in the plains of Moab. That is the final journey as they encamped along the eastern banks of the Jordan River, ready to cross over into Israel. So we have from Ramses, from Egypt, starting from verse number 5, right? Journey number 1, and journey at the end, journey number 42, where they arrive at the edge, at the border, essentially, of the land of Israel. So I want to share with you a few things. Number 1, like this. The names of we have a double portion this week. So what are the names of the two portions? Matos and Maasei. So what does Matos mean and what does Maasei mean? Let's analyze the names, because it's always good to know the names. Matos, just scrolling back up here to the beginning of the second portion, Maasei. Oh, actually, let me show you the names. It's going to be here at the top of the page. Boom. Matot-Maasei. Again, today we started exploring Maasei, but it's two portions, Matot-Maasei. Not always, not every year, but this year it's a double portion. 2 for 1 special. Matot means tribes or staffs. Like a staff, like a stick, is called a mata. Right? A stick, a staff. It's also a tribe. Maasei means journeys, as you know. What's interesting is, one connotes rigidity. Matot connotes something that is stiff, right? Not moving, like a staff. And Maasei connotes movement, fluidity. So the Rebbe points this out and says, it's interesting, if they're two separate portions, that's one thing. Well, they are, but I'm saying if you read them separate weeks, okay, so one theme one week, one theme the other week. But when you have a double whammy, a double header, like this year, when you read both portions on the same Shabbat, it evokes the question, how can we really join these two themes together? Just looking at the names, they seem a bit incompatible. Not only incompatible, they seem paradoxical or contradictory, right? Matot means staff, which is something that is hard. Maasei means journeys, which is fluid, it's movement. Rigidity and movement. How can they both coexist? So there are a few different approaches that we could take, but I want to share with you one of the approaches that the Rebbe explains. Really beautiful. He says, how is it that a human being can truly move through life? That we can truly have that freedom to explore and to grow and to move? It's when we have a good sense of anchor. It's when we have a good connection, when we're grounded, that we can actually move. It may seem paradoxical. If I'm grounded, Matot, then I can't move, Maasei. The truth is, it goes the other way around. A child, let's talk about children for a minute. A child who feels secure and safe is a child who will have the confidence to explore and to go off on their own. Why? Because they have the confidence. Because they have that security. It's when a person doesn't have the security, when everything is shaking, when there's no foundation, that makes journeying out all the more frightening, all the more scary. And let's translate this into spiritual language, into Jewish language. We would say the following. It's our commitment, matot. It's our firm commitment to our heritage, to our tradition, in a way that is absolute. When I say absolute, I mean it's a commitment. We're committed. These are Jewish values. These are my values. It's that commitment that allows us to truly grow. Or using other language that Karen and I have used before in our conversations, and also with others in this call, it's when we are particular that we can truly be universal. It's when we're firmly committed to what it means to be a Yid, to be a Jew, that we can then also be there for others, then we can also expand. It's when we take care of our brothers and sisters that we can then take care of the rest of the world. It's when we love locally that we can love globally. I love this highlight feature. If it's annoying you, I apologize, but I'm loving clicking back and forth on it, right? It seems like a paradox, right? If you're universal, then you can't be particular. No. Be particular, and that will give you all of the teachings, the strength, the platform to be universal. So Matot and Maasei bring out different themes, but they're absolutely compatible. And the messages for us are almost infinite. I mean, there's so many different ways to explain this duality, but they all come back to the same thing. Firm commitment to what it is that we need to be committed to is not holding us back, but it's the greatest catalyst for our growth. That's the bottom line. Okay, so that's insights into the name. Let's get back to the 42 journeys for a moment. Okay, so we talked about the best way to journey is to be anchored. It's kind of like, I'm just thinking, part of what's fun about going on vacation is that you have somewhere to come back to, right? It's like you're going on vacation, Maasei, you're journeying, but Matot, you're coming back somewhere. Okay, let's talk about the 42 journeys. So a few questions that I want to ask, or maybe one question. What's the deal with all the journeys? 42 journeys? You have to schlep, pack, unpack. Who needs it? Once the Jews were decreed to not go into Israel for 40 years because of the sin of the spies, why not stay put? I mean, there are dozens of journeys after that. Look, where did the sin of the spies happen? The sin of the spies, I don't know. It happened somewhere in the middle, right? But after that, somewhere in the middle. But after that, there were dozens of journeys. Why did God schlep them around in a circle? And it was kind of in a circle. And there's a beautiful answer that's given in the Jewish mystical tradition. And that is that a desert, a wilderness, is what we call euphemistically a no man's land, right? It means people don't inhabit it. But understood in more spiritual terms, it means a place where supernal man, right, meaning God is called Adam Kadmon, supernal man. We're created in the image of God, so there's the human man, and then there's the divine, not that God is a man, or it's not gender specific, but not that God is a person, but it means, it's a euphemism for God. So a desert, spiritually, refers to a place where God's presence is not found nor welcome. And our job, when we encounter such spaces, is to introduce holiness and godliness into that space. Our job is to make the desert bloom, so to speak. Our job is to turn a barren wilderness into an oasis of spirituality, of godliness. That's our general task, and that is as true today as it was then. And that's what they were doing. They were traveling around the desert, not aimlessly. Not God wasn't just schlepping them around for no reason. But every place they encountered, they brought the ark, they brought Torah, they brought prayer, they brought spirituality, they brought the Mishkan, the tabernacle, they brought everything. They brought a home for God in that space. And the message is for us as well. We're never in a holding pattern. We're never just wandering or whatever. We're always on a mission. Wherever we are, there's a mission to accomplish in that space. And if we look at ourselves that way, it's like Joseph. The brothers apologize. We're so sorry for selling you as a slave. Joseph says, you sold me as a slave? I don't remember that. I remember being sent by God on a mission. Right? Totally different way of understanding it. Right? Not a victim, not a wanderer, no. God sent me on a mission. If I ended up in Egypt, I was destined to be there. If I ended up in Potiphar's house, I'm destined to be there. If I ended up in prison, then I'm destined to be there. To do something and to then continue the journey. So the bottom line is we're all in a desert on some level. The world around us needs more spirituality, more light, and all of us, we roam this earth carrying the values that we carry to share that light with others and with the world at large. Next idea. 42 journeys. The Baal Shem Tov, the great and holy Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. The Baal Shem Tov taught that these 42 journeys are replicated in every single human being's life. We all experience the very same 42 journeys, from birth, which is the Exodus, to death, which is going into the Holy Land. Not that the Holy Land is a negative, right? But that represents the end of the journey, the end of the traveling. And that's crossing over into the Holy Land, is like crossing over back to heaven. So the Baal Shem Tov says that from the moment we're born into the moment we die, we encounter 42 steps along the way. It will be fascinating to analyze and to explain each and every step along the way, and then to make it and then find the parallel in our journeys in life. But that's beyond the scope of today's conversation. The bottom line is that we all go through these 42 journeys. The Rebbe has a question on this. The Rebbe says, so hold on. Some of these journeys were not good. Some of them were fraught with mistakes and sin and punishment and plagues and all sorts of, I don't mean the Egyptian plagues. Negative things happen in some of these journeys. So that means that a person is destined to have 42 journeys, some good, some bad? No. The Rebbe explains that every journey has potential. And the way the Jews in ancient times, the way they experienced these 42 journeys, some were good, some were not good. But the ones that weren't good, it happened because of their choices. But there was potential there for the good. If they had chosen differently, it would have been a good thing. It would have been a good stop. So the same thing is true in our lives. There's always potential. There's always potential. It's our choice what to make of the journey. The journeys are going to happen. The stops along the way are going to happen whether we like it or not. The question is, what do we do in that situation? Do we cave to temptation, or do we rise to the challenge and act nobly? The reason why I mentioned temptation is because of the journey that's mentioned in, verse number 16. Oops. The first step after Sinai, right? Let me just highlight this whole thing, and then I'll unhighlight it. Verse 16. So after they got the Torah at Sinai, what was the next stop? So, Kivrot Hataiva. Kivrot Hataiva. You know what that means? Kivrot Hataiva means they were buried because of their temptation. This is when the Jewish people complained about not having meat. Remember that complaint where the Jews wanted meat? They're like, well, there's no meat. In Egypt we had meat for free. All we had to do was be slaves. Somehow they missed that part. Right? We had meat, so we want meat. And God gave them quail, and while they were eating, while the meat was stuck between their teeth, there was a plague. And those that were gluttonous were killed in this plague. right? God was not happy with the complaints and the gluttony, etc. So that place is called Kivrot HaTaiva, which basically means the place where Kivrot is like a burial spot, Taiva is desire, or not temptation, desire, like seeking physical pleasure. So those that sought physical pleasure were buried there. In other words, that's where they met their end. So the Rebbe says, so look, so that means that every person is destined on these 42 journeys to be overwhelmed by temptation and be hurt by that. That doesn't sound like a positive message. Thank you, Baal Shem Tov. This is my destiny, that at some point I'm going to be overwhelmed by temptation and it's going to come back to haunt me. The Rebbe says no. They were tempted, but they could have overcome their temptation. They could have channeled their temptation. They could have channeled it away from the meat toward God. Right? You get excited about something, you can channel it somewhere else. There's a wonderful analogy brought. Some say it's a true story. I'll tell you this story. I don't think I've ever told this before. Maybe I have, but years ago. It's if you've heard me classes, a lot of classes, this will still be original. You probably haven't heard me say this. There was once a farmer, a simple farmer, who was working in his field. And one day, the princess comes by in her carriage. And he sees the carriage. I don't know how he knows it's the princess' carriage. Maybe it says the princess's carriage. Who knows? But he sees it and he runs from his field, from his work, and he stands on the side of the road. And as the carriage approaches, it slows down and it stops. And the window opens. I'm sure it was just an opening, not a window. And the princess says to the farmer, "Hi." And he says, "Hi." And he's so smitten. It's like love at first sight. He sees the princess and that's it. Everything slows down. The violins start playing, right? The sun breaks out from the clouds. The whole deal. This guy is now in love with the princess. And he says, wow, he's like smitten with her, and he says something to the effect of, let's meet up. When can I see you next? So she says, on such and such date, like in a week or so, let's meet at such and such place. She's blowing him off. She has no intention of showing up there. But this is what she tells him. He walks back into his field, and this guy is floating on a cloud. He's in a different reality. He is excited. His brain is excited. His heart is excited. Every part of his body he is absolutely just infatuated. He cannot think of anything else other than meeting the princess again at that location in a week's time. He gets ready, he prepares, he dresses nicely, he shows up, and he's waiting, and he's waiting, he's waiting, and his heart is still filled with anticipation and love. And he's waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting. Maybe she's a little late, maybe a day late, maybe a few days late, maybe a week late, but he's waiting with such devotion and such passion and such love and such dedication. He's waiting until he realizes that she's not meeting him there. And then the story goes that he, instead of kicking himself and feeling like a fool or whatever, he tells himself, if I could feel such love and yearning and passion and dedication and devotion and anticipation, right? If I could feel all of those emotions for a human being, can't I feel the same way for God? Can't I feel the same love, passion, intensity? And he channeled it at that moment toward God. And so the Rebbe says that this encampment at Kivrot HaTaiva, where many people met their demise because they were overwhelmed with a desire for meat, that could have ended differently. It's not like we're destined to have that encampment in our lives, that journey in our lives that ends in disaster. No. We are destined in life to encounter temptation. But what we do with temptation is our choice. We could either choose a negative path, which could end negatively, God forbid, or we can choose to subdue, surrender, or better yet, flip and transform that temptation itself toward a higher calling. Flip the love for the princess to the love of God. Flip the love for the meat, for the quail. I don't know, quail is not even exciting for me. Whatever. Flip that temptation, quail. Whatever. Maybe it's a thing. Flip that temptation to a desire and a pleasure in doing a mitzvah for someone, doing a favor for someone else, or studying Torah, or praying to God. Right? Flip that to something positive, and suddenly it's not the place where those who tempted were buried. It's a place, get this, as the Rebbe explains, where you and I can bury our temptation. Not that the ones who were tempted were buried, but we can bury, i.e. get rid of or transform our carnal, our physical temptations. That's the meaning of Kivrot HaTaiva. So we are destined to show up in that space. It's one of the 42 journeys. There's no way around it. At some point in our lives, maybe a few times, we're going to encounter something that is really exciting, that is unhealthy. And the question is, what do we do? Do we jump in? Or do we shelve it? Or flip it? That's our choice. But the journeys are the journeys. Every stop has a message along the way, has a lesson. And even if we make a mistake, by the way, it's still a lesson. You know, it could happen in a good way, it could happen in a direct way or an indirect way, but it's still a step forward along the journey. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I saw that Karen, you raised your hand. Go for it. Go, yeah, there you go. Oh, no. Oh, man. You're unmuted, right? Oh, gosh. I can almost read your lips, actually. No? If you want, you can type it, and I can read it. I haven't checked the chat yet. Let's see. Oh, I'm seeing here, does the Gematria of 42 have significance? You have to wait for the Gematria course, starting on August 10th, Hebrew numerology. I am sworn to secrecy until our numerology course beginning Monday, August 10th. Stay tuned for that. Ken, reminds me of Y. Jacobson's essay about journey from our past, journey to our future, departure Jews and journeying Jews. I'm seeing if I remember that. Okay, I'm trying to remember departure Jews or journeying Jews. I'm sure I've seen it at some point. Right. You can't read it because you can't hear me. Oh, man. Okay, yeah, send it to me. We'll take a look at it. Okay, no worries. Listen, this too is a stop in life. The stop for no audio. So either we can embrace it or we can let it get us down. We're going to embrace it. We're going to embrace it as an opportunity for other forms of connection. Yeah, send me an email. No problem. All right. Good to see everybody. So enjoy the journey. Remember, be grounded so that you can journey. What was the first thing that I said? Is that the first point? I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, number one, be grounded. Don't get grounded, but be committed. Have an anchor so that you can have a firm commitment, so that you can explore. And of course, all of the stops along the way are meaningful, and all of them are designed just for us. So enjoy the journey, enjoy the stops along the way, and make each road stop or whatever count. Make it meaningful. There are no mistakes, no accidents. They're all significant. All right. Thank you all for joining tonight at 7:30 we have Torah studies. The theme for tonight is "Want to Get Away." You know, like the Southwest commercial. So we'll talk about the cities of refuge. What happens when you mess up, whoops, and you end up in a city of refuge, what then? What happens next? Join me tonight for that conversation. I just sent out an email earlier today about underground secrets of the Temple Mount. Join me and the Jewish Indiana Jones, an Israel archaeological expert, Rabbi Avram Stolek, for an exploration of what exactly is buried under Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Recent discoveries will amaze you. So, this is not your tunnel tours. This is live, online, latest discoveries and deep secrets buried under 2,000 years of rubble. So, join us Sunday, July 26th for that event, and stay tuned for more fun and excitement. Oh, and also one more thing. If you haven't yet watched The Rabbi Goes West, you got to watch it. It's a pretty cool film. And it's I love how it's so controversial. It's fantastic. Anyway, you'll see what I mean when you watch it. Okay. Have a wonderful day. And we will see you soon. Take care. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
everyone.
you.
Pleasure.